This is welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our ICTR Enrichment Seminar Series. We have two guest speakers today, and the topic is Innovation and Entrepreneurship at University of Maryland, Baltimore. Before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that this is a webinar. But if you have questions or comments, we invite you to add those to the chat. You can also use the Q&A feature, put your questions there, and we will be sure to answer those questions at the end of each of the presentations today. Getting started now, we have our two guest speakers, and this is, we'll start with Dr. Philip Robalato. And Dr. Robalato is the Associate Vice President for the Office of Tech Transfer and the Director of Ventures, University of Maryland, Baltimore here. And we also have Dr. James Hughes, Senior Vice President and Chief Enterprise and Economic Development Officer at University of Maryland, Baltimore. And we've invited these gentlemen here today because the ICTR has a very close working relationship with the Office of Tech Transfer, because we have a lot of our funded projects have innovations, and we want to assist those researchers in making sure that their innovations are managed properly and that they find the funding resources that they need. And we have been really excited about this partnership. I'm going to start with Dr. Robalato. Dr. Davis, do you have any comments before we start?
No, I want to extend my thanks to both Jim and Phil. This is a critical program for the university, for UMB, and certainly the ICTR. And I think everyone is really going to enjoy this presentation and learn a lot. So thank you to you both.
Great. Well, thank you both for that introduction. Really appreciate it. We're happy to be here today to talk about this. And the title of the talk is Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. And the way we're going to split it up is that I'm going to take about half, maybe 2/3 of the time and talk about, sort of from a micro level, some of the programs that we have that are available currently through primarily our new ventures team, because I think they're pretty relevant to you and you may not be overly familiar with them. And then turn things over to Jim, and he's going to talk more kind of from a big picture view on other sources of funding that are either available now or are anticipated to come on board in the near future, and also sort of biopark happenings and some news from the corporate world as well. So anyway, hopefully this will be very informative and helpful for you. I think, as was mentioned, you can put questions in the chat, and we're happy to get to anything and every question that you might have. So I think probably most people are somewhat familiar with tech transfer. OTT, Ventures Baltimore, it is the same group. It's the same group of people, just two different names. And I think probably many folks have worked with the left-hand part of this slide. So either folks from the intellectual property side or the licensing team. Anytime you disclose a new invention to us, you will be assigned somebody from the IP team and somebody from the licensing group. We have 3 in-house patent attorneys on campus here in the 620 West Lexington building, and several IP compliance professionals. They're great resources, from the patent side of things and intellectual property protection. And then we also have 5 dedicated licensing professionals that are here to help work with you in terms of marketing the technologies, think about it, potential partners, and really sort of work with you through the commercialization process. They do about 50 licenses a year. We probably get the term sheet on about 100 agreements, and we will start 8 to 10 new companies out of these groups every year. And that's a big improvement or advancement from where we were maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. We were able to start maybe 2 or 3, and a lot of them weren't able to do that well. So that's the intellectual property, the licensing team. Lots of great resources. Probably some of you are familiar with some of those folks already, but that's where you start with our group. And what I want to focus on today is on the right side, the new ventures team. It's a little bit of a different group, and they manage three primary programs that I have listed below there. There's the Life Science IP Fund. We have a startup formation program, and we also make equity investments out of this group. So I have this slide up here just to show you who these folks are, but also to highlight kind of a couple of important things about this team in general. The first thing is they are not all employees of the university full-time, right? So everybody else in the group, licensing and the IP side, are UMB employees full-time. We do have some full-time employees in this group, but many, I would say most of the people, are either entrepreneur in residence, they're life science advisors, they're part-time employees. And it's important to make that that differentiation, because anytime there's going to be funding that is approved, it is these external folks that really have to be the ones to give the thumbs up on it. And then the other thing to highlight here is that this group, including those that are pictured on the slide, but also a lot of our other EIRs that in the software space that we work with, or on a project by project basis, between this group collectively, we have folks that have backgrounds in clinical medicine, in bench science, ex-investment bankers, venture capitalists, people that have been CEOs of both startup companies and been very successful in raising money, and also CEOs of small to mid-sized companies, med device, accounting, et cetera. So there is a lot of broad experience and expertise in this group to help you. And then finally, the last point I want to make on this particular slide about the people is I just want to call out two people in particular. The first is Alistair Mackay. He is our primary site miner. And so his whole role is to really look at these technologies and think about ways that we can leverage the MII program, which is the Maryland Innovation Initiative, to obtain additional supportive funding for the projects that we are thinking about funding. And he joined the group maybe a year ago. And then the other person is Linda Petrillo, down there on the bottom corner there. And she's our Research and Alliances Officer. And I think Dr. Davis and others at the beginning said just how closely we work with the ICTR program and with his group. And it's very true. Linda has a unique role in that she is 50% with us and 50% embedded in ICTR. And again, the whole point of this is to make sure that we are aware of promising technologies as early as we possibly can see them, and that they're coming to our attention so that we can protect that intellectual property sooner rather than later, can think about sources of funding sooner rather than later, can start thinking about MII sooner rather than later. So, the whole goal of this is to make, is to help accelerate, promising technologies out of UMB right from the beginning, really to make the process as seamless as possible. And again, the first program that I'll talk about is this Life Science IP Fund. I'm probably going to spend the bulk of my time on this because, again, I think it's probably the most relevant to you. This is a program that was started about 3.5 years ago. It is to help accelerate promising translational stage technologies at UMB. So to date, we've done about 24, split evenly between therapeutics and med devices. And what happens with this program is we make milestone gated investments in them. The whole point of the program is to generate third-party data and extend the findings that the researcher may have up until this point. So to be eligible, all you really need is a disclosed technology. It has to be assigned to our office. And we would like, in most cases, we're going to have an IP, a patent filing or some sort of protection on the disclosure, but it's not 100% necessary depending on what the technology is. And again, this is an investment program, so it's not a grant. There's no specific dates. You basically work with your licensing officer and your patent attorney to kind of help move your technology forward, get it to a certain stage. And if it makes sense, then they would recommend it to you to kind of go to the ventures team to pitch it. And the stage that these technologies typically are at at least on the therapeutic side, by and large, they have some level of animal model data. Doesn't have to be a ton, and I know in most cases it's not very much, but 12 of the 13 projects that we have funded to date have been at that stage. And then for those of you that are more on the med device side, this funding really, almost every single project we work on goes towards prototype development or refinement, and typically testing either in cadavers or animals. So way it's set up, we have an internal and an external review committee. Most of the folks that you saw on that first slide, plus we have another group of people that we bring in on sort of a case-by-case basis, depending on the technology. They look at the science, the unmet need, the commercial readiness, the potential path towards commercialization. And we look very heavily on the potential likelihood of third-party funding. So we like to know that a commercial partner is also interested in this technology. And then, if it's approved for funding, we put together a milestone-gated development plan with you as the PI. We agree to it, and then we start working on it. We will project manage this out of our group, out of our team, on behalf of you and the technology. So most of the funding, again, goes towards external CROs. And again, that's what our partners want to see when they're putting funding in or when they're looking at actually licensing the technology. So that's where we direct a lot of this. And again, the benefits of that are there's very discrete timelines in place. We can set expectations with any third-party investor. All the rights are assigned back to us, and we can actively manage that process. On the other side of that, probably 70% of the projects, so certainly the majority of them, there is funding and work that is typically done either at the core lab here at UMB or in your lab. Those are typically the early pieces of the project, that we need where, we might ask you to kind of extend some of your original studies or do some additional work. Typically, it's something that you were looking to do to begin with, and it's going to help the patent filing, strengthen it, and then we move it along that milestone-gated path that we had set at the beginning of the project. So as you can see from this slide, it's pretty broad. There's a lot of oncology projects and there's a lot of small molecule projects, but certainly any disease area, can be funded in any modality for a therapeutic peptide, cell therapy, antibodies, it doesn't matter. We just happen to have gotten a lot of oncology small molecule projects to start with. The program's been really successful in terms of outcomes, and we try to look at research outcomes and commercial outcomes. Again, these are early stage projects, right? Even if they've got animal data, they're still very far away from an IND. So they don't all go through all the way. I mean, that's okay. But the data that's generated by these projects is very helpful, right? So you can see on this research outcome slide, we've had over a dozen grants that have been supplemented by the data that we've been able to generate for the projects through this program. Also, new patents, new disclosures. There's been a couple of clinical trials started. We've had actually 5 startup companies that have been at least in part funded by this. 3 have raised capital. And in multiple licenses and options agreements have come out of this as well. Right now, there is a ratio of 16-to-1 for what we're calling catalyzed capital, meaning for every dollar that we put into a project, we are now at a point where we're getting a 16-to-1 return on that in terms of external funding. These are the 3 companies that have actually been able to raise money, and their technologies were funded at least in part through this particular program. Genie, isoprene, and Proterex, again, broad anti-inflammatories, cancer, and a med device. A lot of the capital that we're getting is coming from the financing on those startups, so it's going into the companies. But we have had a multitude of grants that have been generated by the PIs coming from corporate, third parties, sponsored research, MIIs, ICTR fundings, and it's those non-blue colors on the right-hand quadrant there that we are really trying to increase, right? So we really encourage people to talk to their licensing officers, talk to their patent attorneys here about the program, and just explore it further. Get involved with it sooner rather than later, because again, the whole goal is to kind of help promising technologies move faster. Okay, so that is the Life Science IP Fund. The other two programs that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go through fairly quickly because they're a little further along, probably from where most of you are. The second one is startup formation. So in certain cases, we can start companies directly out of the university. We don't do it very often because, as you can imagine, it's a lot to manage a company. So we do them sort of one at a time. And we started this program just a couple of years ago. We've done 3 so far. And again, this is really geared towards you got technology, it's ready, it's really ready to be in a company. You just don't have a management team. So we can step in and be the management team temporarily for it. We formed Living Pharma with Eduardo Davillo back in 2015. We were able to sell that to Miltenyi Biotech 2 years later. Surgigen was the next company we did with Vadim Morzov, and that was a device technology for laparoscopic hysterectomies. We were able to co-invest, find a strategic partner for that company, and then sell it to them about 2.5 years after we founded it. And then Isoprene is the company that we're currently managing right now. Rana Karishi, who's our director of new ventures, is leading that company with Vincent Anjar, who is, of course, last year's Entrepreneur of the Year. And they just received a direct to phase 2 SBIR for $2 million, and they're working and located out of the biopark. So this is another program just to be aware of. Again, we don't do it too often, but it is there. And then last thing I want to touch on before turning things over to Jim is just our equity investment program. So again, at the beginning, I mentioned how we have 8 to 10 startup companies every year coming out of UNB. And that's a big increase from where it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, where it's 2 or 3. And it's not just the number, but also the companies, by and large, I like to think are doing a lot better in terms of their ability to raise money and to survive and to be successful startup companies. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But one thing we had noticed is that they were having a hard time getting to that initial sort of investment, that valley of death, right? Raising those first funds. So this program is designed to help our companies, our startups coming out of UNB, get that first round of external investment funding. So unlike a lot of other programs, we are limited in that we only invest in UNB technologies. That's it. Like Warren Buffett says, invest in what you know. But we look at it as sort of like a 5-year diligence process, because odds are we have been working with you as a PI for years. We know the patents, we know how they're prosecuted, we know what claims, how the claim history went. You've probably met with the EIRs. They know the technology. The venture advisors know the technology very well. We already probably know who might be interested in funding the technology, who might be a good commercial partner. So again, it's a long-term diligence process, and we've made to date 16 investments in 11 of our startups, and it's been very successful in helping them sort of raise that first round. We've also had 4 exits. So in other words, 4 of the first 5 companies that we invested in were purchased by an acquirer. And these acquirers have all been big, with a lot of resources to kind of continue to move the projects forward. The highlighted investments here, they're all either sort of right at that early, just getting to market, or in late stage clinical trials. So again, we started doing seed fundings, but with the success of the program, we've also started doing follow-on fundings like B rounds, and we did our first C round with Glicknick last summer. In terms of what this program accomplishes, again, on the left-hand side of the slide, 16 investments. These companies have all told us, and I remember Jim and I thought they were just sort of joking or being nice, but just how helpful it was to have the university sort of rubber stamp the technology and say, this is something that we think is worthy of an investment. They can use that to take that to other early stage angels or other programs that we're doing investments as sort of validation of the technology in the company. And so with our 16 investments, and we only invested about the $100,000 to $125,000 range typically, there's been almost $90 million in terms of co-funding or follow-on funding that's gone into these companies, all of whom are in Maryland, and most of whom are in Baltimore, actually. It's been a really good return to the university on the technologies, both through the investment and through the license agreement. And we've been able to use a lot of these returns to sort of help support the startups and the inventors even further. So, the first thing we were able to do is Jim was able to get us some space over in the biopark so that when your company is moving out of your lab, right, it's ready to go. You need a space, but you really don't need full-time space, and maybe you can't afford it. We can get you a business address, and so that you can apply for certain grants like SBIRs, and you're outside of the university. We also were able to set up a wet lab again with support from Jim over at the biopark. And so now there is a wet lab that can be utilized by startup companies coming out of UMB. Right now, isoprene is in there, but the idea is that it could be shared space for folks, for companies. And then the last thing is with the School of Medicine and some funding from a third party. And again, through Jim, we were able to build out this UMBB prototyping space. It's right in Bressler, so folks don't have to walk or go far. We have an on-site engineer from College Park who's under contract and part of our group. And then one of our patent attorneys, Dustin Lee, who is also an engineer, kind of manages this program. And this again is designed so that the med device technologies don't languish, right? They can move very quickly, and they've got access both to all the resources we just went through, but also Fischel and their resources. Bill Bentley has also been very involved in this and is very supportive of this program. So again, this is just a slide kind of summarizing some of the new support, both lab and prototyping space that's here for you guys. And this is just a summary of everything I just talked about. We invested in 24 technologies. We started 3 companies. There's a 650 square foot wet lab space over in the biopark. We have a medical device prototyping space that's getting busier and busier. We just launched that a couple of months ago. And we've made 16 investments in 11 companies, which has really helped towards catalyze capital for our companies. We're also at the point now where we're starting to see products getting approved. So quickly, this is our contact information. I think we'll probably send you these slides or make them available just so you know who does what and who you might want to reach out to if you have any questions. These are some of our companies. I just put this up there as we're going to transition over to Jim here. But, I think not everybody thinks of UMB as starting a lot of companies in Baltimore, but the truth is we really do. And, people have, I heard of Harpoon and Breathe and Glicknick and Remedy, but all of these companies, especially in, the second, third, and fourth rows, are all new companies that have been started in the last few years, and all the way from software like Pumis and Adult Informatics, diagnostics, Patagon, their small molecule, med device, everything. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jim. Again, we're happy to take any questions you might have, either now or I guess at the end. But again, these resources are all up, they're all running, and they're all available, for you now. And with that, I will turn things over to Jim Hughes.
Terrific. Thank you, Phil. Before I get started, does anybody, we'll have time for questions at the end, but are there any immediate questions for Phil at this point? Admit I'm not sure how I'll see the questions if there are.
Dr. Hughes, or Jim, I'm looking at the chat and the QA, and I don't see that anyone has any questions right now.
Okay. Well, very good. Let me go ahead and jump in, and thank you very much for inviting us. It's been wonderful working with Dr. Davis and ICTR, I guess even before it got started, and we're very proud to partner and, as Phil described, do some programs together. And as we go through this, we'll say our programs, the programs Phil has developed, it's a real mix between the ideas generated by Phil's group, by listening to faculty, by looking at benchmark programs around the country. So we're proud of what we've got, but really would like your input to help shape the programs. Would also, as I get started here, We have been very fortunate over the last several years through a couple of key support programs. The Empowering the State relationship with the University of Maryland College Park and the support of the governor and the legislature has brought additional resources to what we're doing. So most of the new initiatives we're highlighting here are really due to that Empowering the State and I would say the way that the legislature in particular really is increasingly looking at universities and UMB as a driver for economic development. So that's part of what I'm going to focus on here, is looking at some of our broader economic development initiatives. But first I wanted to start with external funding. So the nice thing of the programs Phil described is pretty much all of those are in-house to UMB. And certainly with the assistance of outside advisors, but that's something that we can make the decisions. We can move pretty quickly and do what we think is best for the money. And then there are a variety of initiatives outside that we're more in a situation of pursuing grants. So let me just touch on some of those. This is a little different, but it's the Maryland Innovation Initiative Fund. This is $8.5 million per year from the state of Maryland to help us recruit and retain entrepreneurial faculty through endowed professorships. So we essentially get donors who commit to typically $750,000. So it's not a small amount of money. We apply for through a competitive grant process, and we're competing with Johns Hopkins and College Park and UMBC and Loyola College and pretty much anybody and everybody in the state of Maryland for these grants. We have been incredibly successful, a testament to the faculty and the philanthropy offices. UMB wins about 25 to 30% of the total funding. Significantly more than Hopkins and College Park and UMBC. So we've been very successful here, and we've funded about a dozen endowed professorships at the university through this program. Mary Pouton in the School of Medicine is particularly adept at winning these. So something to keep in mind. Phil mentioned the Maryland Innovation Initiative. There's $5 million a year. In this case, we're collaborating with Johns Hopkins, UMBC, College Park, and Morgan State. We don't dominate quite the same way we do with the Maryland Innovation, but we do very well, and it's anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million additional money that's brought to UMB faculty and startups. We have been, Kurt Sivin and the Stem Cell Research Center at the School of Medicine has been very successful with Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund grants. And actually, this is an old slide. The legislature approved increasing this funding from $7.5 million a year to $15 million this next year. So anybody who has any stem cell related research, please talk to us, talk to Kurt. There's a lot more money available out there, and it coming directly to the university. And also for collaborations with companies. And then the Maryland Industrial Partnership Program, that's been around forever and continues to be a nice program that specifically subsidizes collaborations that university faculty have with Maryland-based companies. So our office is actively involved in all these programs. Mary Morris, who's part of ORD, sits on the MII board and also the MIPS board. So we have great familiarity, and we can also help with the Maryland Innovation Grants and to some extent with the stem cell. That I would say Kurt Siven's really the key person there. Phil mentioned the investment. Let me just touch, in addition to the work that Phil's office does, we have two highly complementary programs. I'll part of this is, I would say, in large part due to Phil's success with our early investments and our exit strategies that generated strong returns and good economic development. The University System of Maryland created something called the Maryland Momentum Fund that's actually managed out of ORD here at UMB for the entire system. That group has invested in close to 30 companies, and the University System of Maryland has allocated a total of $16 million of investments. We do very well with that program. Generally, that Phil's group makes the earlier stage investments, typically 100 to 250,000. Maryland Momentum Fund generally makes investments from 250,000 to 500,000. There is a company, Verilox, that was founded by a couple of UMB faculty that we've invested $1.25 million into. And then very exciting, working with Dean Reese and Mary Pouton and the Board of Visitors for the School of Medicine. They have started raising money from donors, and they've raised about $250,000 that we've invested in 2 UMB startups through our office. So there are a lot of resources out there. This is very unusual for a university. This was traditionally, this type of program is managed by an economic development agency for the state. But I like to think it was because the state liked what they saw us doing, and they also saw great need in Baltimore City. So they have been giving us $1 million a year for the Baltimore Fund, which is managed by Mary Morris. And that funding has just increased to $2.5 million. And it's specifically focused on collaborations, supporting companies that are collaborating with the university and locate in Baltimore City. So it's very much a Baltimore City economic development program. And we have invested in about 24 companies at this point. And these are grants or investments. And we generally have 3 categories here with UMB startup companies, the types of companies that Phil talked about. We will pay 50% of their first year's rent to locate in Baltimore City. As they grow, we also will provide them a one-time grant of $5,000 per job once they reach 10 employees. So this is a very nice inducement. As you do a startup company, money is always tough to come by. And yeah, this program brings down the cost of rent and can get you started. The other thing that we've done, and this is more selective, is what I would call strategic partners. And all of these companies are located in the biopark, which I'll get to momentarily. And these are large multinational companies. Pharmaron is a multi-billion-dollar contract research organization. They have a 96-bed clinical trial unit in the biopark, just a couple blocks from where most of you are, if you are at the university today. They've collaborated extensively with the Center for Vaccine Development on dozens of NIH-funded clinical trials. Illumina, many of you may know, makes genetic sequencing equipment. They've created an East Coast Innovation Center in the biopark, and they are collaborating with the university on training. We're actually talking to them right now about them donating equipment to us. BD, Becton Dickinson, I've got another slide on that, so we'll go into that more detail, but on the diagnostic sides. And then Catalent is one of the largest contract manufacturing companies in the US and the world, and they have created their gene therapy group here in Maryland, and we helped recruit them here, retain them, and they are manufacturing they manufactured hundreds of millions of COVID vaccine doses on behalf of Pfizer and Moderna. We are also supporting maybe not strictly through the Baltimore Fund, but various resources. The Maryland Intellectual Property Resource Center, which is out of our School of Law, headed up by Patty Campbell. We have a small business development center located in our office that helps small businesses and to pursue federal loans. And we also have, we support a student-focused entrepreneurial program called The Grid. So we're trying to build the ecosystem as best we can here. And I'm sorry, let me focus on the very exciting development of the ecosystem. Is Steve Bisciotti of the Ravens has been very engaged for the last couple of years through a family office in helping entrepreneurship and the translation of research from the universities to the private sector. Steve is in the process of creating contributing $100 million to create the Bisciotti Institute. It'll be an independent institute working very closely with UNB and Johns Hopkins. They will have a translational fund that has a lot of similarities to what Phil's described, but it's a lot more money. So we look at what Phil's doing as the foundation, and now the Bisciotti Foundation will build on that. They will also create fellowships for entrepreneurial fellows. They will create fellowships to help recruit and retain minority scientists. And they will also be doing a lot to promote the Baltimore innovation community across the country. So we are in near weekly conversations with them to help shape what they're doing. They will do an announcement in the next couple of months, but wanted to let you know that was on the horizon. And we have been arranging meetings for them with some faculty. They've met with a dozen or so faculty so far, maybe some of you on the call. So some good things happening. So we do have this internal focus of how can we get UMB faculty connected with all these things. Let me go through this fairly quickly, mostly pictures, but we have been developing over the last 15 years the biopark. Hopefully most of you are familiar with it, but we've assembled 14 acres of land. This is next, I'll show you a picture of it. Well, let me jump right to that. Here's the picture. This is Martin Luther King Boulevard is to the far right of the screen, and this is Baltimore Street. So it stretches 2 or 3 blocks down Baltimore Street. We have room for about a dozen buildings. We've built half of them, and we have room for another half a dozen buildings. And we have about 1,200 people working at the biopark, about 3 dozen companies. It's actually within Baltimore City, actually within Greater Baltimore, the largest cluster of biotech companies. And it's an interesting mix where we have startup companies, like Phil has mentioned several of these, but Glicknick has a small group of people, but they've raised $90 million, and they are moving a couple exciting therapies through the FDA process right now. Next Step Robotics came out of the Department of Neurology, and they are have a stroke rehab device. So I won't go into all of these, but a collection of startup companies, and then these larger firms that I mentioned, like Catalent and Pharmaron and Illumina and BD. We also have the Smith School of Business has a night school program at the biopark. So we do have UMB employees who are getting their MBA at night at the Smith School just across the street. So it's become a very active community. So active that all of the space in the biopark is leased. It's a total of about 500,000 square feet that we have over there. And I guess we have about 1,500 square feet available on the ground floor of the garage. So not very compelling space, but we are just got Board of Regents approval 10 days ago that will enable us to move forward. This is privately developed building, the building on the right here This is right on the corner of Martin Luther King Boulevard and Baltimore Street. So it's immediately across the street from the School of Pharmacy and catty corner from MSTF. So right there on MLK. Some of you may recognize the firehouse right here, which we have acquired, and we're private developers investing $3 million into turning that into a restaurant. So this will be a 254,000 square foot building. We will have a one full floor will be a flex lab incubator for very small companies up to 5,000 square feet. Again, we'll subsidize the rent for the first year for any UMB startup in the building. Have a big 10,000 square foot conference center. And we're breaking ground in September, and will open up in the summer of 2024. So not much more than 2 years ago. This will be, people will start moving in. And just a couple more pictures of it. We'll try to get a good environment there, right on the street, with a plaza between the brand new building and the historic firehouse. Here's just another look at it with it's Martin Luther King stretching up to the right and Baltimore Street to the left. And let me, just as an example of one of the things that we're doing in the biopark that is just opening, Becton Dickinson has a large facility in northern Baltimore County, and they are opening an innovation center in the biopark. It's relatively small, just a couple thousand square feet. They're bringing in some of their equipment, their diagnostics equipment, and they will be providing access to that for UMB faculty. We have set aside $100,000, not a huge amount of money, but $100,000 to help our faculty collaborate with them, and that money could be used for materials or just we'll take a look, but at what the cost might be involved. But it also becomes an opportunity. BD will bring in their newest generation of equipment and give us access to it, and they'd also like us to give them feedback on the equipment, how it could be new and improved. So a big part of what we're doing is trying to create our own young companies through what Phil's doing, but also engaging with very large companies. And Dr. Davis and I have been talking with Genentech for multiple times over the last year and a half, and we'll see if that pans out. But we do find if we can sculpt good partnerships with the larger firms, that they can bring expertise and funding and equipment and jobs for our graduates and sponsored research and philanthropy. So we are trying to connect those together as best we can. And that is the end of both our presentations. So I wanted to leave 15 minutes for questions, and I think we've done that.
Thank you, Jim. We do have one question, but I see Dr. Davis has just appeared. So Dr. Davis, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so I want to thank you both. And this is a quite incredible journey, and how you develop these programs. And this really is a world-class operation. And you and your team have also done this with not a lot of resources, and don't quite know how you've managed it, but it's really superb. And I hope everyone here now understands the depth and the breadth of your program, and they should seek help when they want to develop their entrepreneurial tech transfer IP programs, because you're absolutely there to help them. So, thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we really appreciate the all the support that you've given us, and the relationship with ICTR. We think it's a nice match where you're helping to generate more research, more innovation along these lines. We do have capacity. We probably work, Phil, would you guess maybe 5 to 10% of the faculty at UMB work with us pretty extensively?
Yep.
I think we get good response, but that leaves the vast majority of faculty that we're just not engaged with. So we'd love to spread the word and work with more people.
I just wanted to step in for just a moment. It looks like we do have a question and a comment. Before I turn this over to you to address these, just wanted to let everyone know that one of the things that I learned from this interaction with our tech transfer team is that you want to engage with them in the beginning before you do poster presentations or publications to protect your intellectual property. So that was a big learning experience for me. And so I hope that individuals who are at all interested and have something that they're thinking about, reach out to the OTT first before you make any moves to go public with any of your discoveries, just so that you can protect that intellectual property. So with that, I just wanted to note that in the chat, we do have a question here from Peter Lamaya, who is asking, are there opportunities for folks doing global work, for example, partnering with international institutions, any funding for such?
Yes. Well, first, let me thank you for the comment about coming to us early on. So we do want to protect the technology, but also want to make clear that once we've protected it, we're not going to restrict you from talking about it or publishing or presenting about it. So we just want to protect it. And in many ways, it becomes a big part of the marketing to help get the word out there. So I don't want people to think that we're in any way going to hinder you from doing what you do very well. We just want to protect it first. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times people say to us, hey, I've got a presentation next week. Okay, well, even if it's just a slide deck and a paper, we can file a provisional on it. And again, it's just, as Jim said, to protect it so that we preserve the ability to get patent rights on it down the road.
Yeah, and as far as the global goes, so we certainly, we get patent protection in the US, and then we evaluate where overseas to get patent protection. So we do have international companies that we work with and license our technologies. Speaking more broadly, the university does a lot of research work overseas, and the university has created a Maryland Global Initiatives Corporation it's an affiliated nonprofit, and I sit on the board of that, and we work primarily with IHV in a program that was set up by Bob Redfield when he was here through the PEPFAR program. So we actually help facilitate that program. So I'd be happy to speak with the person, either get more details now or speak with the person offline about what the specific opportunity they're pursuing. Wanda, you're on mute.
Peter, if you would like to put your contact information in the chat, I can forward that on to Jim and Phil if you like. So the other item that's in the chat is actually a statement and not a question. So this is coming from Stephen Fisher, who says, many faculty projects are funded by VA and NIH. Could you comment on this and joint development?
Yeah, so that's very true about the NIH, and a lot of projects that we license or partner or fund or all have received funding through the NIH. So that in and of itself is certainly not an issue. You know, there's specific rights that we reserve for faculty and for research that in keeping with NIH guidelines. So that's a pretty straightforward process. You know, again, there's a lot of contact points with the NIH, with funding agencies here in the office. Gail Knott, you'll see her contact information on one of the slides. She handles all of that very well on a day-to-day basis. So if there's any specific questions, you can reach out to me, you know, about this afterwards, or to Gail. And then the VA, so, you know, we had a relationship with the VA where for about 18 or 20 years where, you know, the intellectual property would be disclosed to us. We would also let the VA know, and then we would be the lead on it. A couple of years ago, they decided right before COVID that they also wanted to take the lead on certain projects. So, you know, the way, if you're got a VA appointment, it really, you just reach out to us and you disclose the technology, and, you know, you should let the VA know as well. And then we really sort of decide now on a case-by-case basis as to which party would be the lead on the intellectual property. So it's not, you know, really different than how we work with a lot of other institutions, Johns Hopkins, or any other university where there's investigators at 2 or 3 or even more different sites. We just, you know, agree up front, you know, who'll take the lead on prosecuting the patents and who will take the lead on, you know, costs and licensing. So, you know, the VA process has shifted more towards that from where it was, you know, 5-10 years ago, where it was just automatic that UMB would be the lead on any technologies that was jointly owned with the VA and us.
Maybe wonder, could ask Phil and Jim a question. So as you both alluded to, we have a very important partnership in Jim's office, your office, Linda Petrillo, because it turned out that close to 50% of the pilot and feasibility grants awarded by the ICTR really had significant intellectual property significance and opportunity. And so there, you know, Linda and past colleagues can help people guide individuals through the process. When do you think faculty should reach out to your office if they think they have some significant intellectual property?
Well, I hope none of the patent attorneys are on this call, but I would say as soon as you think about it, reach out to us, because, you know, the only thing that might happen is we say, okay, look, this is great, this sounds great, but we don't have enough to patent right now. When you get to this point, which is what you're planning to do, let us know. So I think the earlier you can involve us, the better. You know, sometimes people will say, well, you know, I just don't know if it's patentable subject matter or not. That is okay. You know, there's no expectations that anybody would really know that. That's why we have in-house patent attorneys. So I think, you know, the answer is as soon as you think, hey, this is interesting, I think this is worth protecting, or I should look into it, or even if you're not sure, just go ahead and reach out to us. And we will sit down with you, go through it, find out what your plans are, and just start working with you, even if it's before we can, you know, file a patent or you know, pursue a copyright. Never too early.
The other very close partner that we have is the University of Maryland Medical Center. And some of you may be aware, they had done an innovation challenge last year focusing on clinicians. We're teaming with them to do the innovation challenge this year. We have a overarching umbrella agreement that covers if you're a UMB faculty member and you jointly invent something with a UMMC employee, we have an agreement with UMMC that the UMB office, Phil's office, handles that. So that should not be an impediment. Yeah, working with, well, really working with anybody. We have, if you're collaborating with somebody you went to college with who's now out at WashU and you're co-inventors, we work on those types of things all the time and just, you know, connect with the other entity. But certainly for the for the medical center and for University of Maryland College Park and UMBC and Hopkins. We have a lot of experience working with them.
Well, I don't see any additional comments in our chat. So if anyone has anything they would like to add now, please do so. We just have a couple more minutes. I will say that when you leave this session, you will be redirected to our ICTR survey, and definitely invite you to complete that, offer your comments, your suggestions. We really would like to bring interesting, valuable information such as today to our campus community. And with that, if there's not any additional comments, does anyone have any closing thoughts before we end this session?
Well, would add that the University of Maryland has very generous consideration that so when Jim and Phil have guided your science through to your own company and then you sell it to Merck or Pfizer, certainly understand that not all of those monies get scooped up by the university. It's very generous, and that should not be an impediment for going forward and sharing your ideas with Jim's office.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today. And with that, I think that we will let you go have a bite to eat.
All right.
All right, everyone, have a great
Thank you all.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.